Welcome to this week's episode of Eye of the Swarm, your deep dive into anything and everything related to Yellow Jacket athletics. He is the Big Sal Matt Johnson. I am Jon Garver, Season 6, Episode number 10. And things ramping up in the world of winter sports. And don't look now, but gaining ground in the rearview mirror are the spring sports.
Yeah, we're it's interesting. This is the time of year where there's a little bit of crossover, not a lot. Men's tennis is in action now. They played a couple matches last week against John Carroll and UW Whitewater.
Regular Carroll,
not John Carroll. Sorry, too many Carrolls.
Yes.
Well, Carroll of Wisconsin, either way. The Pioneers.
Yes.
And then UW Whitewater. Lost both matches, but kind of getting their feet wet a little bit. The women, I think, kick up on the 16th. I'm going to say, is that correct?
I think that's correct.
So that's both of those teams are going to get going here. Baseball and softball are practicing. They will not be playing for a little bit yet, but they're on the. It's definitely in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, you're about a month away from,
or in the horizon
from their startup.
Yeah, I should say. I got to get my metaphors correct. But both all four teams. And the hockey and basketball realms now are in the thick of the conference schedule. And then you've got indoor track and field who don't have team scores, but they are getting ready for the UMAC Indoor Track and Field Championships, which will come up in the end of February, early March. So, I mean, everybody's right in the thick of it right now. You know, and for the most part, I think everybody's performing pretty darn well. You know, there's been a couple hiccups along the way, which there always is, but overall, pretty good.
Yeah, it's been a good run. I mean, you had a couple weeks ago when we did this last episode, we were talking about the win streaks that everybody was on. You know, so it's been pretty consistent. Yeah. And in some cases, consistently inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, there's been you know, right now on the men's side for basketball, I can say this that it's wide open. There really isn't much separation, if any.
Well, going into yesterday, it was a 4-way tie.
Yeah,
for first place.
And you know, the Yellow Jacket men are keeping pace right now. They're one of those four teams. 5-2 in the league. They're 8-10 overall. Had a tough game against Morris where, you know, things didn't go very well.
Right.
You know, they got to overtime, but there was just a lot of mistakes made in that game, that self-inflicted wounds.
Sure.
And they straightened that out in a big way yesterday against Crown. They played a much better game, I thought, all across the board against Crown on the road. You know, Javon Walker had a really strong game. Reed Johnson's having a really good year. And so they got a big win there, and the women slogged it out a little bit. Was not a sharp performance, I would not say. I don't think they would agree with you on that, but did enough to beat Crown, and they're 6-1, and right now they're tied for first place with Martin Luther in on the women's side. So both teams are fighting in there. Both teams are definitely going to be in at least in the conversation for you know, Final Four conference tournament in a few weeks here. You know, women's hockey. They're 9-8-2 now. They're 1-5 in the league, but I can't really fault them for the last two losses that they had. I mean, they went on a really nice run, and then they lost to the number 2 ranked team in the country twice. You know, and they're
currently number 1 now.
Yeah, now they're number 1, and they got to.
But
play
they
them
won't
again.
be next week because they lost last night.
Did they? Okay. Yep. And the Yellow Jacket women are going to play 3 straight against that team. They've had a little bit of time in between the 2 games of River Falls, but now they've got them again on Saturday. And that's a game I'll have on the radio, by the way. A plug for myself, but. And then they'll get into it with Eau Claire, and I think they've got Eau Claire.
Then they have 2 with Stevens Point and 2 with Northland to close it out.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of winnable games in there for them, but they're having a nice year. And I guess the headliner of the winter season so far, the men's hockey team. And I don't want to put the jinx on Rich McKenna or anything, but you're the authority on that squad. But they're playing really, really good hockey right now.
They are, and I've said it on the air. I've said it to McKenna. You know, I've said it to some of the guys. If you would have grabbed me after the 4th game of the season, when they were sitting at 2-1-1, and I just coughed up a 3rd period lead to Bethel, I would have sat there and said, well, number 1, where are the goals going to come from? And that was my big concern.
Yeah.
And 2, they're not fun to watch. Because those first handful of games, this was not an entertaining hockey team to watch.
Yeah.
And then you get to late November, they kind of started to find their stride a little bit. And I think it sounds really strange, but if there's a way for a loss to galvanize a team, I feel like the loss at Stevens Point kind of showed them a couple of things. 1, we can hang with anybody. 2, we can score goals because they lost 5-4 in that game. And they had to come back. They had to battle back.
Yeah.
You know, they were down 4-1 early. So they had to fight their way back, and they did. And they've been a different team since that day.
Yeah.
And then they went on their run. They're unbeaten in 11.
Yeah.
And they've beat some good teams in there.
Yeah.
They've played some really good hockey in there. And I think last weekend you saw two really good contests against a River Falls team that they're not ranked nationally or anything. That's a good hockey team. Yeah. And they're capable of beating anybody just like the rest of the WIAC is. So they've been a very fun team to watch here of late. And
I thought that
it was a prove it weekend for me.
Yeah.
And they did. I am confident enough now to say this team is good.
Yeah. Saturday was the first time I've seen them play in person. I've watched them play online a couple times. But I came over here after the 2 basketball games, and they have a noticeable jump in their step that I think they have not had in recent years. I thought they were clearly the better team on that night. There's always a couple of hiccups where things don't go as well as you'd hoped.
Yep.
There was a lot of penalties in the beginning of the game, which I think I don't know if that kind of disturbs the flow a little bit. I know.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Yeah,
it absolutely does.
There was some carryover, I know, from Friday night and Saturday night in that regard. There was a few things that were probably said between the two teams that played out in the first 10 minutes of the opening period on Saturday.
Yep.
But I thought after that the guys really settled down and played well, and I thought that their cycle game was good. They created a lot of opportunities. They scored 2 goals. They could have had, based on the opportunities they were creating, they could have had as many as 3, 4, maybe even 5 goals in that game. Outshot them handily.
Yep.
So I was impressed, and I have to say that, like I said, I have not seen them obviously as much as you have, but yeah, I liked what I saw.
Yeah, their board game is really good right now. Their speed game is really good right now. All season long, their defending has been fantastic.
Yeah,
they're giving up the fewest goals in the conference by a lot.
Okay.
So and even if you go back to last year, Matt, the goaltending and defensive play wasn't the problem.
No.
This is a team that could not score any goals.
Yeah.
And they seem to have figured that part of things out right now.
Yeah.
All of that said, are they a good team? Yes. Is the national ranking deserved? Yes. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
This coming weekend, by the time this airs, it'll be over, but you're going into a building at UW Eau Claire where you've won one time in 15 years.
Yeah.
This is a place where they have not played well. This is a team that for some reason has their number. You beat them earlier in the year on your home ice. Can you exercise some of the demons down at the Hobbs Ice Arena now? That's what we're going to learn. If they can do that this weekend and take care of business down there, they create a little bit more separation and get a little bit closer to locking in one of those top 2 seeds. This is what you want.
Yeah. Well, Hobbs is, like I said, it's been a bugaboo for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Has been for a lot of teams. Eau Claire's put together some really, really good teams over the years. But again, that's like you say, you're kind of exercising some demons in a way.
Sure.
Going down there, especially when you have like Stout and Point coming up, that's a whole nother, that presents its own challenges.
Yeah.
So
it's a meat grinder.
Yeah.
This schedule's a meat grinder, and you look at the fluctuation in the standings, because it truly is a league where anybody can win.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of movement in the standings from night to night, and there's a reason why every single year you have no idea who the conference champion is until the final day of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be tight at the top. Mm-hmm. It's tight right now. It's a logjam right now.
It is, but it's fun to be in that conversation.
Yeah.
Because in years past at this time we've watched this team struggle.
Right.
We talked about it a little bit on the air last week about the way the last 8 to 10 games have gone over the last handful of years, and it's not pretty.
No.
It is not pretty.
No.
So they took a good step last weekend in starting this stretch run off the right way, and now they have to figure out a way to keep that going away from home.
Yeah, and it's sort of in certain ways it's sort of the same situation with the basketball teams.
Mm-hmm.
The women have created a little bit of separation with their last couple wins, but they've got a tough game against North Central. That's a tough gym to play in. It's a very small gym down at North Central.
They lost there last year.
Yeah, it was their lone
loss
last year, and it was under kind of, I don't want
to
say bizarre circumstances.
There was strange circumstances there.
Yeah, it was, and that was one of the things that sort of came up, I think, in the off-season meetings was how that turned around, because if the Yellow Jackets had won that game, they would have gone 14-0 in the league, and last year they ended up 13-1. So that, there's something to that, and like I said, it's a long story as to what happened there. Suffice it to say, the Jackets were playing a day after a game, and North Central was not.
Yep.
So they were fully rested, and we were not. And you could really see that come out in the fourth quarter of that game. I watched that game online. They were up, or up or tied or very close to it after 3, and then, or at halftime anyway, and then the second half, they just hit them.
Yep.
And you could see North Central was just fresher. And so that was kind of the reason for that loss. And like I said, I think that had a lot to do with some of the scheduling changes that happened this year. But the ladies are 6-1 right now, and I know that they're going to focus in a little bit more on that game on Saturday. For the men, it's a very big game. North Central's men feel like they're a very good team, and they haven't been shy about telling people that they think they're the best team in the league. And we'll see. The Yellow Jackets beat them here the first time around in a really close game. But every game that we play with them, regardless of where we play them, it's always a tough game.
Yeah,
it's always tight. So right now the Jackets have won 4 in a row against them, but I think the combined total is like 8 or 9 points or something like that. It's very tight.
Yeah,
and that's how games in the UMAC have gone in recent years, and that's just the way it's going to be. So we'll find out a lot more about the UWS men on Saturday, and the women. Right now the schedule's in their favor because they've played a lot of really tough road games already. In fact, they've played just about every tough road game that they have.
Yeah.
Without North Central. And more's coming up, obviously, but they get Martin Luther at home second time around. They get Northwestern at home second time around. They get Bethany Lutheran at home second time around. So this is, the Yellow Jacket women have done a lot of work so far. There's still work to be done, but they've done a fair amount of it already. So it's going to be interesting the next couple of weeks. And women's hockey, regardless of how that game on Saturday goes, they've got some winnable games coming up after that, for sure. I think they can get Eau Claire. They've already beaten Point a couple times, or have at least should have beaten Point a couple times. I know they beat them pretty handily in that tournament.
Yep.
Last time they saw them down in Fond du Lac during the holidays. So, there's a possibility of some wins coming up here, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a good entertaining stretch run.
Yeah,
no doubt about
that.
that.
So we'll see how things go. That's sort of what's on the horizon here.
We'll take a step back from winter sports, though, and jump into spring sports here as we move to the roundtable segment. Yeah, it's funny. My mom watched the last one, and she said, "Why do you call it a round table? Table's not round."
It is on one end.
And I'm like, yeah, but the horseshoe table segment just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. I'm just looking at this table and it's not really. Well, it's roundish.
It's roundish. So yes, the roundish table segment of Eye of the Swarm. We're going to talk tennis.
Yep.
As Matt mentioned, the men's tennis team got back into things here last weekend, and so we'll have head coach CeeJay Schaffner and Mateo Abarca Pino coming in to join us and talk a little bit about what's on tap for the tennis programs here the rest of the way. We'll have that right after this break. This is Eye of the Swarm.
Find your passion. Find your people. Find your purpose. Find your superior.
We're back for the roundtable segment of this week's Eye of the Swarm, and it's time for us to talk a little bit of tennis as head coach CeeJay Schaffner is with us, as well as Mateo Abarca Pino. Close?
Close enough.
Close enough.
You even rolled the R a little bit.
I do.
Wow, that was impressive.
You missed the whole debate before we even came back to this, but yes, I a little nervous about the pronunciation, and I know I'm probably gonna have to say it at some point when he graduates and goes across the stage, and I have to try to get that one scored away.
I was sort of looking at the camera just to see.
You got my honest effort there, Mateo. You got that one. So
I mean, I think he was feeling the heat on that one because we were all waiting for you to say it.
Yeah.
And I got a close enough out of it. So
yeah.
Yep.
Well, you even rolled the R.
I'm going to take that as a win.
I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to try to roll it. I just, I just don't. So there you go.
That's why I sit on this side and I have to introduce every segment.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Exactly. That's not my forte. That's not what I do.
At any rate, linguistics aside, let's jump into talking a little bit about tennis because it is tennis season, even though it's still January. But
it's like 40 degrees outside.
An 80-degree swing from last week. How about that?
Yes.
But they're not playing outside as of yet. It's currently an indoor sport. But back at it here as the January segment of the schedule is already underway.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on. Yeah, we played for the first time last weekend for the season against Whitewater and Carroll, and it went well. A couple of really high caliber teams, and we did our best. We played well, we played hard, and I was super happy with just kind of the end of day debrief on it. So yeah, no, it was good. And this weekend we head down to the Twin Cities. We get to play at the University of Minnesota, which is always a good treat. They got an amazing facility. We got McAllister and Luther on the men's side, and then McAllister and Concordia, Wisconsin on the women's side. So it should be a good weekend down there.
That's the same facility that the UMAC hosted the championships in before, correct?
Yep. So 2 years ago, we went down there for the championships, and this year we're back there in May for the championships. So it should be, it's always good to, get a feel for those courts and the stadium, the feel, and just kind of being in that atmosphere, because it is a bit intense when you kind of approach it for that conference tournament. So and I think there is Minnesota hockey, men and women, and basketball going on that day, and it's in the same kind of corridor there. So it should be a really fun environment.
For those of you who are unaware, the U is laid out. The athletic facilities are all jumbled together in that one little half mile, maybe mile radius.
Right.
Because you got the football stadium, Mariucci is right there, Ritter is right there, Baseline Tennis Center is right there, Williams Arena is right there, and so is the pavilion.
Yep.
So those are all basically.
That's how it should be.
Yes. I mean, the only ones that are not are obviously soccer and baseball and softball. But, they're all jumbled together over there. And when they're all at home, it gets a little hectic. So
yeah,
that'll be interesting for you guys to have to deal with the traffic. And
I'm glad I don't have to battle for parking.
Well, parking is already tough down there.
I know.
And so, I don't know. I think you guys have a bus, so that helps.
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
You guys are taking a bus, I hope.
Yeah, we're taking a bus, and
Okay.
the other schools are taking vans. So we're coordinating parking, all that sort of stuff. So we
Okay.
Yep. It's not
But
ideal.
it's quite the thing. And I know the Baseline Tennis Center, though, is actually quite nice. I think it's.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's all indoor. They do have outdoor courts, but they do have
Yep.
the capability of playing indoor, and it's quite large, as I recall.
Yeah. There's 6 front courts and 4 back courts, and
Okay.
thanks to donors last year, we're going to be streaming a couple courts in the front for all those front matches. So
Cool.
you can watch at home this weekend too.
That's very cool.
And I imagine that surface is more conducive to what coaches want as opposed to what we have in this building. Correct?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so our field house plays quite fast. It's probably twice as fast as real tennis courts that most players are used to. So this facility actually is on the opposite end. It's played quite slow. So it's always good to just kind of see the differences from facility to facility, especially and kind of just take notes so that we're ready to go again in for the conference tournament.
What does it mean when you say it plays fast?
The ball skips. It barely bounces. It just kind of skids. So it's it doesn't play like a true tennis court plays. It's very fast. You don't have a lot of time. If you hit a good serve, you won the point. It's just kind of that's just the way it goes here. And so in our facility now we do a ton of drilling. We do just a ton of consistency and stuff off the ground, whether it's serves, volleys. And a ton of just tossing and getting the consistency down. So.
That's interesting because I obviously come from the hockey world where you got fast ice. You love it. You want fast ice.
Right. Yeah.
As a player, you want it the opposite. You would prefer something a little bit slower.
Yeah, I think slower is better. But as Coach was saying, it's just crazy how much it changes between facilities. We were playing the last weekend, and one court to another was just crazy.
No kidding.
You can feel it. Personally, I prefer slow courts. I come from my country where we play in clay courts. So it's way slower than here, and it's so difficult. The first week took me forever to get used to the timing and the shots again, getting to the rhythm of the hard court. But, yeah.
Clay courts are pretty rare, too. There aren't a lot of them.
Well,
in the US.
in this neck of the woods, that's pretty rare.
I think there is one clay facility, isn't there, somewhere?
There's a public.
Yeah.
There's a few private, but there's a public one in the Twin Cities. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. Baseline was created slow to sort of mimic a clay, to cater to some of the international players that were coming into the college game. So
Okay.
it's kind of fun to just kind of see those sorts of ways to compare different facilities and surfaces and how you want to cater to different playing styles and everything. So
tennis is a sport that really does rely heavily on the surface that you're playing on. I mean, even if you watch professional tennis, guys that are good clay court players are not necessarily going to do very well on grass, and especially not on hard court.
Right.
Just because the pace is completely different.
Yeah, and also the preparation that they get before getting used to the different courts. You can see before getting into the grasses, and they go crazy with leg stuff. and so on. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
really changes.
You have to change. They have to change their approach almost in their footwork. They have to work on the
Well,
footwork.
and I
aspect,
suppose too that's why in the pro ranks, for example, using Wimbledon as a grass court, for the weeks leading up to that, all these players are going and playing grass tournaments, obviously too.
Yep.
So 'cause
Yep.
you can't just go surface to surface.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, they have to take. Yeah, it's usually several weeks preparation before they even get to one of the Grand Slams.
Yep.
Because you've got Australia that starts out. It's that's hard court, and then you get to the French, which is clay court. So now you're going from fast to slow. Wimbledon's in between. And then
Granted, you've got 4 months in between.
that's true. That's true. And then there's a shorter distance, I think, between
There is.
the French Open and then the Wimbledon, and then
Wimbledon and
the
US
lead-in, and
Open.
then the US
Go
Open,
back
like,
to hard
yeah,
courts.
back to hard courts again.
Yep.
So they actually, it's interesting that the layout and the scheduling for the 4 majors, and that's something that we've not talked about is kind of how the different services play. And it's interesting that Mateo just brought it up. Even different courts in the same building, even if the surface is the same, can play differently. That's pretty interesting to me. I thought it was very consistent across. Turns out it really isn't.
Yeah, you just got to be adapting, right? That's the big piece of it. Just as long as you can, see the problem and own the problem and just kind of adapt. So yeah, the nice thing about this facility is we adapt every day, and we are able to kind of solve those problems as they come at us, rather than just playing on the same court every day.
So the outdoor courts we have here, those play slower, I assume.
Slower than the field house, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty standard in my opinion and everybody's going to have their own kind of feel, but it's pretty standard compared to other hard courts in the area. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel way different. The courts outside, they feel like park courts. When you go to a park, and you just go play tennis there. Then compared to a facility exclusive for tennis, but it's way better than when we get inside. So can't complain that much.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Question about because I know you guys play some home matches also in Duluth.
Yep.
What's their surface like?
Yeah, they have it's the same hard court surface as our outdoor courts,
Okay.
but they haven't been resurfaced in a while, so they play quite fast. So,
Okay.
You're
yeah.
talking Longview, right?
No,
Or are you talking
indoor.
Well, there's
Duluth
Longview,
indoor,
and then
Okay.
there's also the
Yeah.
indoor.
Right.
Yeah. So the indoor courts, they're fast indoor courts. They're kind of known to be kind of skiddy or pretty
Okay.
quick. So
Okay.
yeah.
Because Longview obviously is hard court.
Yeah.
Outdoor, so.
Yeah. So
Let's talk a little bit about the makeup of your schedule for the year, because your non-conference on the men's side especially, pretty robust. Not hiding from anybody. You're willing to have racket will travel and let's go play just about anybody who's willing to play. This is probably the toughest schedule you've put together so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we got Grinnell and Gustavus on the schedule for the first time this year, and both really strong teams, top regionally ranked teams, and we're just trying to see that level before the tournament so we can be ready for anything. But yeah, it's going to be it's one of our tougher seasons for sure. So, yeah.
And you've really split it up too. I feel like you played more in the fall this year than you have in years previous. And you go back a handful of years, there was nothing in the fall.
Yeah.
And since your arrival, it's been, let's split this up, let's get some fall action in, and that's been advantageous to you guys as well.
Yeah, I love it. I think the players enjoy it as well. Mateo can speak on that also. But it is nice when you get up here and it's nice outside. We play as much as we can. Since we're already practicing, well, let's throw in some matches. So, yeah, we did that this year. We did a trip down to La Crosse and played some good teams down there. We brought Carleton to town. The women had a couple of exhibition matches and just some really good fall matches play in addition to our ITA tournament. So, the new legislation with the NCAA and being able to kind of split up the days and weeks has been really nice and advantageous to us, just given our climate and our program. So we're enjoying that kind of ability to play outside until it gets too cold. And then we kind of transition to off season and come back in the spring and do as much as we can inside until we can get back outside. So, yeah.
I suppose really nice, too, to not have to wait until February to begin your season, so you get to jump into it as soon as you get on campus.
Yeah, I think we as an athletes, we really enjoy to play the sport. So obviously, and start to mixing up since the fall, the sports and the education at the same time. It also helps a little bit for then when we come back in February, it's not that big of a shock. We know how to handle it. Mm-hmm. It's also very fun to play good teams during the fall, enjoy the weather, as Coach said. And, yeah, have some fun there, get some rhythm, and then come back stronger for the February.
And one of those places you get to see good teams, good players, is when you go to the ITA. Talk to me a little bit about that experience.
Well, that was my first ITAs this year, so I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. I think I was a little bit green, I would say. But after that, I think I realized some stuff, put some game on, and could get out of it. It was fun. I think everybody really enjoyed it. We had some good results, and I think that's the most important thing, just see how every player gets their job in and bring it out.
I can't imagine putting something like that together. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
the sports information guy in me wants to run for the hills if that thing comes to this
there's
campus.
several different brackets, right? Like
Yep, yeah. So you got the
yeah.
main draws for singles and doubles, and then you got several back draws. And then if you lose out on day one, there's a consolation draw that begins the next day. So there's hundreds of matches that take place, and it's over the course of 4 or 5 days if you're making it to the finals.
I think this is the reason why Whitewater and Gustavus host it.
They have
Well,
the
I mean,
capacity.
they have the facilities to
Yeah,
do it.
exactly.
Yeah. So
They also have the programs. They're both of their programs are good.
Yep.
Really good, and so they're kind of tennis schools. They're known as somewhat tennis schools in a way.
Yep.
So they know how to schedule that. But like you said, wow, I mean that's a daunting challenge.
Yeah.
Trying to figure all that out.
Gustavus does a great job hosting. I think they're hosting both next fall too. So it's just their indoor capacity and then their outdoor capacity right on campus, and then the surrounding area. There's just so many tennis courts there, so it just works well in what they do. So yeah, it's a good HQ kind of for Midwest tennis right now.
Well, and the other question I have about the ITAs before we start talking about the season and the UMAX this year, how many teams are actually represented? Does anyone actually do the math and figure out how many teams actually have players?
I'm sure the
playing?
people from Gustavus do.
Aside
from them.
do you have any idea? Because every one of your players, both on the men and women's side, they play someone from a different school every match, just about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's been a wide range. I mean, we've seen everything from playing teams in Illinois to playing the MIAC schools to playing WIAC to playing the NAC. There's the variation is really incredible.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so jaw-dropping when you get to that just environment, is everybody's competing with the team uniform on, but not next to their teammates. So it's really individualized. You got to have your teammates in the stands helping you. I'm an Uber driver that weekend. I don't coach. I just run people around to their matches. That's just the way it goes. So I tell them, don't expect a lot of coaching from me that weekend. It's just go get your stuff done. Let me know how it goes. I'll pick you up, take you here, get you lunch, and go play again. And that's just kind of the way it goes. But in terms of pure numbers, I'm not exactly sure, right? There's a 128 singles draw. And that's just the main draw, right? So then you got all those back draws. You got the doubles draw, 64. So there's all kinds of draws.
That's double the size of March Madness.
Yeah, yeah.
Think about that, and then because you have winners bracket, losers bracket, consolation bracket, and that's just on the single side, and then you go into the double side, and it's just
Yeah.
I mean, I could see his brain melting just
Well, in my mind, I'm going, can you imagine having to put that file together?
Yeah. Oh, it's.
Yeah.
I've seen on there. It goes pages.
Oh,
Yeah,
my gosh.
Yeah, multiple pages, lots and lots and lots of pages.
Yep.
But that's what makes it so cool, though, is that it is a
Right.
very individualized event, and not being able to do a lot of coaching because you're constantly running back and forth, and that goes for all the teams.
Yep.
So it's basically you're out there, let's play, and then I'll come back, I'll check in with you and see how things went, and that's basically how.
Yep.
How did you feel about it?
Yeah, no, one thing that CeeJay said is we go as a team, but we play for ourselves. It's just different for how the normal season goes. And I think for the international students at least, and for me, it gets a little bit of how it really works back home.
Right, yeah.
Because we're not used to the team environment and the points environment. It's always ourselves. We can bring the coach and whatever, but it's alone in the court. And I think that was also very shocking for me as my first ITAs, come back to that environment from playing 2 years of team tennis.
Right, yeah.
If you can say it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then that's what's interesting about it, is that you get both the singles. And tennis is one of those sports where it is both individualized and team. Right. You do have a team score, but you also have your individual match that you're playing, whether it's doubles or singles or both. So it is one of those. And in that regard, it has a lot. It's very similar to cross country or golf or or track and field in the way where you're running your race or you're playing your match. But at the end of the day, it does count toward a team score. So I mean that. Sometimes I don't think that I necessarily always appreciate, especially for the international, how that changes things a bit, especially in a sport that is considered very individualized in tennis. I mean, at the professional level, it's completely individualized, unless you're playing like Davis Cup or something.
Yep.
So it is kind of a different. It is kind of a different world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And yeah, if you're alone playing individual, you lose, you win alone. But if you have your team behind, you can still lose a match and still win for the team. So
Right,
it's
yeah.
a different feeling. It gets a lot of pressure out of you sometimes, as well as I can put pressure on you if it's depending on you. If you're the clutch match,
Right. Yeah.
you can feel it too. So
You're playing the one.
it can
and two
go both
spot.
ways.
Yeah.
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 That's why I love college tennis, and you're seeing it in the pros right now too. There's so many pros that have been playing D1 college tennis lately, and it's more than usual. So just you don't get anything like college tennis in that team environment. And then now we're seeing this. Instead of going pro right out of high school, a lot of international students and American students are going to college for a year or 2 or 3, getting that experience, really high level, coaching and facilities and athletic training, physios, and then hitting the tour. And they're having really great success right now, which is really cool to see.
Do you think that the development piece is the reason why you're starting to see that shift a little bit?
Yep. And a big piece of it too is you can get a lot of access to free stuff. Where if you just hit the tour right away, you
You're
can't
footing the bill for
afford
it.
So
Yeah.
it's just it's benefiting each other with just that college landscape and having access to all that, and then going on tour. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, question for Mateo is, and this is a question I've also asked Joe Mooney in the past because he has a lot of international players on his team as well. And how do you find places like UWS to play? I mean, obviously, coming from another country, I mean, it doesn't seem like the most obvious choice to come to Superior of all places and play tennis. So what was your process
From
like?
Ecuador to Wisconsin.
To Ecuador all the way up to the shores of Lake Superior. I mean, Lake Superior is obviously famous internationally. I mean, the Great Lakes are famous internationally.
I don't know
at a
about
certain
that.
point. But in terms of like a tourist destination, like when you come to the States, there's quite a few tourists that'll come over from like Asia and other places just to see the Great
Right.
Lakes. But other than that, I mean, it's about as I don't want to say obscure, but it's pretty obscure from Ecuador all the way up to Superior. What brought you here? I guess is the question.
I think every international student that finished playing here has the same process. I think we are all thinking about developing our sport and using it to help us with our education, get outside of our country, look for a better future, at least in the South American area. It's more a little bit like that. And well, you usually start like getting prepared in your academics first, English level, and you can start thinking about sending some emails, sending some folders, working with companies. Coach has some of them. And then, I don't know, you just gotta get where you feel like. I feel Coach is a pretty good recruiter, gotta say. From all the schools that I got, they were very expensive, and I didn't feel that they really liked me.
Okay.
But then this was the perfect fit for me. So yeah, it's a complicated process, I would say, but most of us, we come already with the idea of going through it and doing it, putting the effort. And I ended up here, and my teammates also. We have people from Brazil, India. We had people from Japan before.
Yep.
So.
Well, this is interesting because it's a scouting service kind of thing too, right? Well, do they reach out and say, we've got this kid Mateo down in Ecuador. He is interested in coming to the States. Is that one of those things that you hear about and then you start checking them out a little bit, see how they play? And
Yeah. The big piece for me is just once I get in contact with the player, it's just getting on a Zoom call or a phone call, and just trying to understand the fit. And and from there, it's just understanding, getting to know the person and player, academic, vision, athletic vision, and making sure it all matches. But yeah, whether it's just going on YouTube and finding the videos, or just getting cold emails from players, or working through a recruiter too. So yeah, it's just kind of a mixed bag, and making sure you find the right people for the right place.
I think it's actually a really cool thing. Because I mean, I've talked extensively, obviously, with Joe Mooney about this too, because he's got a lot of international players on his roster, and he's said the commonality that I see a lot of times is that they really want to come to the States and go to school in the States. They really want to experience that. Was that also a thing for you? Did you just want to come to America and play?
No, I mean, it's a whole thing.
Okay.
I think we really have, probably you don't see it because you live here, but outside from the States, there's a big idea of college and college life, living outside, like all the places that you can visit here, playing a sport, all the things that you get. So everything adds up. And yeah, it's been so good so far. So can't complain at all.
And it's clearly something you are comfortable with because you have a very international flavor on your roster.
Yeah, we have a pretty mixed bag right now of players from all over the world, and players from Minnesota and Wisconsin, and some Michigan folks on the women's side. So no, it's just it's, to me, it doesn't matter where you're from. It's just a matter of like, how do you fit into our program, right? And I've had, I get emails every day from players, international players that are looking at different colleges. But to me, it's like, okay, are you going to love UWS tennis? Are you going to love UWS? And are you going to love the situation? Okay, great. Like, I don't care about your level, where you're from. Like, that's what we want. That's the kind of the brand that we're trying to hope to attract.
That's a pretty big task for you as a coach then, because it's one thing if you're blending a roster of kids from the United States and using Rich McKenna and Canada.
Yeah.
You have a much more diverse roster. How do you blend all of those different cultures, nationalities, and players together to form your team?
Yeah, to me, I think a lot of our players are growing up doing it already. So, like, you go to tournaments and you're surrounded by international talent. So I don't think it's too big of a surprise to come to a roster and have a diverse kind of population. But, there are challenges to it, and just understanding where people are at personally, and then just kind of making it fit to the mold, right? Like, there's different cultural beliefs throughout the world that, differ on the tennis court. But then you get to playing a match and it's all the same. Like, the score is the same across the world. The court size is the same across the world. So it doesn't really matter where you're coming from. It's just a matter of culturally, let's make sure it's a good fit and we have the same vision and goals that you're looking for. And then, tennis is the same. So
it's funny because I want to talk about your roster a little bit more, because I'm trying to think of how many different countries are actually represented. There's like 4 or 5, isn't there?
I think on the men's side this year, we have folks from India, Brazil, Ecuador, and the U.S.
Okay.
And Spain this year. We have a freshman from Spain.
Marquitos.
So
okay.
Shout out to Marquitos.
And then on the women's side, you add Germany to that.
Yeah. Because Mateo touched on this. We've also had players from Russia and Japan in the past, and
Italy.
I mean, it's been really. It must be kind of an interesting melting pot kind of situation, where you're getting all these players from all around the world. Players who don't necessarily even know each other at all. And then they all come together and they start playing tennis together, and it's this kind of like bonding experience. It's pretty cool, actually. Beyond just the tennis part of it, being learning all these different and meeting all these players from literally across the globe. It sounds like a really unique experience. I'm kind of jealous, to be honest with you, at a certain level.
No, it is, but I feel like also for us as players, it's also difficult to live with the different cultures that we have. Like, people from Brazil are not going to be the same as people from India and from Ecuador and from Germany, I don't know, Japan.
Right.
So that mix up is also a little bit interesting, and like how we manage to deal with it, because sometimes it can be difficult, sometimes it can be easy. So
What was the biggest culture shock for you coming here?
with the US, probably the food.
Yeah?
I gained some pounds. That's for sure.
A lot of burgers and pizza in this town.
Yeah, you just gotta eat what you find. No, but I think I'm already used to here. I think I'm pretty easy to get used to the places. So when I go back home, I'm all chilled. When I come here, it's not that difficult. But I think that's just the years that you get here. There's people that been here and they don't want to come back home. So that's how it works. It just depends on the person.
Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming season, I guess, because now the rubber really starts to hit the road for you, and especially after that spring trip when you get into conference play. It came out this week, and the bullseye is squarely on your chest on the men's side, as you were chosen as to finish first overall in the UMAC, and then on the women's side, the number 2. So talk a little bit about what those mean and what it's going to look like for your teams this season.
Yeah, it's a preseason poll, and everybody knows the caveats to those. We're happy to be where we're at, and just the expectations it puts on us. We try to take a step back with the expectations. We've talked about it before, and just having just kind of this idea of no expectations, just go out, play, have fun, do your best, and at the end of the day, whatever happens, happens. So, we do have that target on our back on both sides, to be honest. Even at the 2 spot on the women's side, just defending that championship. But it's just a matter of you got to go out there and do it, and just kind of see as rosters change for each school, like where's everybody at. One player leaving, one player coming can really change a whole tennis team. So whether you're moving people down or moving people up, it really makes a big difference. So yeah, we just got to go out there and take care of business. And again, that's why we're playing such a hard schedule on both sides. Like we want to be ready for anything come April and May. So
We've focused a lot on the men's side of thing here so far, but the women didn't just take steps last year. They made a leap last year. So talk about the success of that program.
Yeah, I mean, it's really come to fruition what we've been, just building over the past couple of years. And it was really cool to see, just being on court with them and winning conference for the first time ever. Like it's a really cool moment. And I'm all about those moments. So how can we share these special moments together on the court, off the court? It's mostly off the court stuff where it's the important stuff to me, whether we're going to Chicago for nationals or going to St. Louis for a conference tournament or going to Nakusa, Wisconsin to play on grass courts. But it's, just having those experiences throughout the year, those moments kind of build up to that big moment of winning conference for the first time for them. So just really cool to see their, smiling faces, excitement, hard work's paying off, and they get to lift the trophy. That's just, you don't, for the first time, you never get to experience that again. So
how are they going to relate to the increase in expectations? Because obviously as a coach, you have that increase in expectations from year to year, but now the rest of the conference is taking notice in that too.
Yeah,
how are they going to handle that?
Yeah, I just repeat again and again, forget the expectations, forget like what is expected of you or us as a team, and just go play. And as soon as we can just kind of live in that moment, because expectations, whether it's based on past or for the future, it's really like we want to stay in the moment, be present, and really just take care of business 1 foot at a time. So 1 point at a time, 1 game at a time, 1 set, 1 match, right? Like that's just kind of our mantra on the women's side, and I think the men are right on board there, just different ways of saying it. But we're having a blast on the men's side this year. Like Carol I think that was the best tennis I've ever seen us play. And we were probably a little bit less talented than last year. So it's kind of cool to see that increase in level. I mean, I don't think anybody expected us to take the doubles point against Carol, and we went in there and, like we played. I've never seen us play that well in doubles, so it's just kind of cool. And that's like, you talk about nobody expected that, but at the same time we go in there with no expectations, have fun, and try to take it. And that's just both sides. That's what we're trying to do again this year. So.
That's fair enough. I mean, the mindset has certainly worked on the men's side. I mean, this has become a yearly thing for the men to be expected to win the north side of it anyway. And the women, it was pretty exciting to watch them, last year. I mean, they were 16, 17 wins, wherever they had last year. And they returned a lot of players from that team. So it's, it's fun. And I happen to know, at least I'm sure about this. I might be wrong, but it seems like both teams also really support one another. I mean, that's always been kind of a tradition within your program, is that both sides really are vocal in supporting one another. How much does that help as well?
Oh, it is nice. I was just thinking about what Coach said, and I remember our freshman year, we were hoping for the girls to win a match, and it was like when they win a match, we were like, yeah, so hyped. And last semester, it was like they win back to back to back to back, and we were surprised, and of course, it's a good feeling. I like how both teams are very close to each other. I think it's good to see them cheering for us. We also do it for them, and you can feel the support and the bond in between. And CeeJay also makes a lot of things to make that happen. It's
a different structure in the UMAC because you have that co-op, I guess, with the St. Louis Conference. And explain that and how you can win your conference but not win your conference, if you know what I mean. It's just something that you kind of went through last year. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we have
it's unique.
Yep, we have the UMAC North, which is our group of teams that everybody's used to knowing and hearing about from the UMAC. And then we have the UMAC South, which is Greenville, Principia, Webster, Westminster, a lot of teams that are just south of us, way south. So so when we each play our own regular season matches, and then we come together for the conference tournament. The 1 seed from the north will play the 2 seed from the south, and then vice versa. And the winners of day 1 will advance to the championship on day 2. So last year, our men lost to Greenville in the semifinals on day one. And our women actually beat Greenville in the semifinals and advanced to the championship on day 2 against Principia. And that Greenville women's match was one of the most fun matches I've been a part of. We're down 2-4 and it's looking tough, and we come back to win 5-4. And it's just one of those moments again that like you just look back on and remember forever. And I hope they do too, because you could feel the energy switch and flip, and things just started to steamroll, which was amazing for us. So, but yeah, it's interesting, So the Principia just dominated on the men's and women's side last year. So they took it. They went to the tournament. I'm pretty confident. Do you remember? Was it Greenville men or Principia men?
No, it was Principia.
Yeah, so Principia on both sides went to the tournament.
It was
so.
Greenville the year before, right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
you lost them in the championship.
In the championship.
Yep.
Yep. So, yeah, it's always they're good, and they're similarly like based to us in terms of roster construction with a good mix of international and American talent. So, it's a good matchup. One of the biggest differences is they're outside a lot.
Yep.
we're inside a lot. So, they get to play a little bit more, I think, than we do. Just speaking from our situation up here, but it's kind of fun to have that co-op.
And
So.
obviously knowing the competition that you get from that side of things plays into the ruggedness of the non-conference schedule and
Yep.
prepping your teams
Yep.
for what you're going to see when you get to that point.
Yep, yeah, and another, interesting, unique aspect is there's not a lot of common opponents, so we're going into it a little bit blind just based on what we've had last year, and if they got new players, we're kind of going into it blind, which you don't see that in a lot of sports. Like you got scouting reports for most teams and most matches that happen and games that happen, but for us, it's like, and that's why it's big on me. Like, let's just do the best that we can, because we can't really prepare for Greenville. We can prepare our team for the championship. That's
Sure.
it. Yeah. So.
I know we're kind of up against things with time and everything here, but one thing we talked about before we came on the air, the change in scoring. And so
Yeah.
now
Yep.
in doubles play, all 3 matches only count for 1 point.
Yep.
Why? Why that
Yeah.
change? And from a
Yeah.
player standpoint, I mean, do you like that? Do you hate that? So can you guys elaborate on that too?
You can go first.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start. It changed because it was voted for, and it was there was like a lot of people on both sides, and it just happened to kind of make this flip. I personally enjoy it the way it has changed to, purely because it's aligned with the other divisions. So
Okay.
I enjoy that alignment rather than, just kind of, today we're doing this, tomorrow we're doing that. Like we're playing D1 format here, D2 format here. So I kind of like the idea of just like, we don't have to have that conversation anymore. It's all the same. Previously, we've had stronger doubles teams, so that this change happening 5 years ago might have been a little bit different, my feelings towards it. But just kind of taking that step back, singles is best 2 out of 3 sets for 1 point, whereas doubles before with the old format was 1 8-game pro set for 1 point. So now they've kind of said, well, let's make it 2 out of 3 sets for 1 point, and that's why doubles has been changed to
That makes
I see.
sense now.
That makes
That
sense.
makes
That's-
sense to me now.
That's kind of I think kind of the underlying reason.
Yep.
But again, like it's, a lot of Division III programs don't have a lot of court space. They don't have a lot of access to indoor. So that's where there's some pushback is, hey, we can practice doubles more. It's one way for us to just kind of work with just the format, the cards that we're given. So I can see both sides of the coin there. So, yeah. How do you feel?
I really like it, the 3 points format, but I feel like from the player position, the mentality doesn't change that much. We always go in and we want to win, no matter how much points
Right.
it costs. We know that maybe if we tweak a little bit on the doubles, we know that it's not going to be that much of a harm. But also, you don't know when that point is going to be useful sometimes.
Sure.
So we have to take it as serious as if it was 3 points, 1 point, that doesn't matter. And I feel like all the guys are on the same page on that. We could see that against Carol.
Carol, yep.
Everybody was fighting. It didn't matter how much points it cost. So I think I like it personally, the 3 points thing. But we just get adapted.
Yeah. What's interesting is there was only one match last year between men and women where the results would have been flipped. So,
Really?
Yeah. So and it was college. We went down there and we just got kind of slapped in the face for doubles.
Yeah,
we
that's
went
a slow
down.
start.
Yeah, went down 0-3 real quick, and then we ended up winning 4 out of the 6 singles. So if the format was like it was this year, we would have won that match. Otherwise, it's all the results would have been the exact same. So, and there's you can't really measure the momentum. Like against Carroll, you go up 2-1 after doubles, and maybe that's a little bit of a different mindset than just going up 1-0.
Sure.
Both times though, you only have to win 3 of the singles points to win the match. So, yeah, I know. It's not
It
too
doesn't
much
make that
to-
much of a difference at the end.
At the end of the day, yeah. Like Mateo said, you got to go try to win every match regardless. Like, that's just the way the sport works. So, yeah.
Final thoughts?
I was glad that was explained because we couldn't quite figure it out.
Yeah.
It has more to do with sets being played than
Yeah, and
Yeah.
because in my mind it's like, okay, is this changed just for the sake of changing? Is this we
Yeah.
haven't voted on anything in a while, so how about this?
Yeah.
We're like basketball and halves versus quarters.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. I mean,
shot clocks and all that
the
stuff.
time.
So,
The time has always stayed the same. It isn't the scoring hasn't changed
but
at all.
it makes
so.
a lot of sense. So
Yes,
I'm with you.
exactly. So, yeah, that's. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about that we're into February now, and it's like 40 degrees outside. I know it's supposed to get some snow in the next few days, but I mean, I have to wrap my head around the fact that you guys are kicking up the schedule starting in January. That always is kind of a thing I have to keep in mind because I'll forget it otherwise. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what both teams can do. I mean, expectations obviously are high for both teams and deservedly so. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys can put together this year.
Yeah, it should be a good season. I'm excited to see as well. It's we got a target on our back, as people have kind of said here. So it should be good, and we'll see what happens.
They'll be playing outside with that wind howling off the lake before you
Oh,
know
yeah.
it.
That's true. That's true.
So enjoyable. Yes.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this episode of I Have the Swarm. We want to thank head coach CeeJay Schaffner, and I'm going to make you say it.
Mateo, Abarca, Pino.
Close enough. Give them a close enough. We want to thank them for stopping by. For them and the big sound Matt Johnson, I am Jon Garver, and thank you for watching I Have the